excited for this one. Hello Cinnamon Bun, welcome to my first spell video. Yay! Oh my god, I've been waiting for this for so long. I'm really excited to share this one with you. It is the Bright Ideas spell, and it is for finding creative solutions, solutions to story problems, getting breakthroughs, like breaking through creative blocks and that kind of thing. And I created this spell, I suppose. I'll tell you a little bit about the kind of basis of it in a little bit. I have been using it myself and I absolutely love it. And I think that you guys are going to love it too, because it fits perfectly with the kind of stuff that I already talk about in terms of writing and stuff on my channel. So hopefully you're going to love it. And if anyone tries this, please let me know. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. So I created this spell because I am a writer and a witch. So if you haven't already seen my Hello, I'm a Witch video, kind of explaining like why is there a spell video on this channel now, then go and check that out. It'll be linked below. So first of all, I want to note that this is actually inspired by a spell from the book House Magic by Erica Feldman. Actually, I've got it right here. I might as well just show you. This is it. I absolutely love this book. This is inspired by the Pyrite It Down manifesting spell from this book, which I absolutely love. I love the simplicity of this kind of format of spell, and I also absolutely love pyrite or fool's gold, so it's perfect for me. But I have changed it significantly to make it more specific for this kind of Bright Ideas spell version. So, what is this spell for? When's a good time to use it? Well, I actually created this spell, or had the idea for it, when I was working on North of the End, my current novel, and I was making some changes to the theme of some of the plots within that, and I got to a kind of breakthrough point where I decided, okay, this is the theme that I want to go forward with. And then I was like, oh my god, that raises so many questions for everything else that's going on in this story. So I then suddenly had this like cascade of like things that I needed to figure out. I was like, how does it work with this? What about that? Blah, 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 blah. So I was like suddenly overwhelmed with like, oh my god, and I have all these questions or all these like story problems that I need solutions for. And now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I am a big proponent of brainstorming. And so that is generally how I get the solutions to problems that I have in my writing or in my life. I will brainstorm them. But it was something about like the scale of this big list of questions that I was like, and I'd already just done a ton of brainstorming to even get to that point, and I was like, I would like a little help with this. I would like to call in the answers, or just give my brainstorming, I guess, like a bit of like a magical boost, to try and get me to the other side of this huge stack of story problems, I guess, that I had to solve. So that is really what the spell is for, not just obviously that one situation, but like any time where you're looking for a particular answer for something in your creative life or with a creative project. If you're a writer, then of course it's great for that. If you have story problems, plot problems, you aren't sure what your theme is, or you're unsure about the ending, or you've got some kind of plot hole or character problem, this spell can help with all of those, but it can also help with any other kind of creative problem that you're having. Anytime where there's just like a piece of information that you need, you're looking for like a breakthrough, you're maybe stuck and you need to move forward, this spell is great for anything like that. Now, normally in magical circles, most people who have some kind of familiarity with witchcraft or just like woo-woo stuff and magic and stuff, are familiar with or use divination. And that is a way that we tend to get answers for things, or clarity or insight, for our everyday lives, for all sorts of things. The reason that I didn't immediately go to divination for this is that these are really specific story problems that I had that need really specific answers. And I didn't think that divination alone was going to cut it. Like I said, I normally brainstorm these things. So this spell is really, it can be considered an alternative to both divination and brainstorming, but it also works great as well as, so kind of complementary to divination and brainstorming, which are kind of like your magical and your non-magical ways of getting information and solutions and answers and clarity and insight. So it's not like you can just do this spell every single time you have something you need to figure out when it comes to your creative project. It's not going to eliminate brainstorming, but for those particular situations where you've maybe been banging your head against the same problem for a while, or you just know that it's going to be a really big involved process to try and figure out all the details of something, or like me, you find that you have like a big stack of different kind of related questions or problems that you need to sort out, this spell is going to be a great addition to what you would normally do to find clarity and to work through that. Now, on to the spell. So first, let's look at what you will need for this spell. There are some basic things that you absolutely need, and then there are some additions that you can make, so I'll run you through. The first thing you're going to need is a paper and a pen. So I am just using these pages from, this is actually my kind of like witchy bullet journal, I guess, my grimoire. The only thing to consider in terms of like size of paper and what kind of paper you want to use is that the spell will be created on top of this. I like to use a tray so that I can then just pop it on and then arrange it on here, and then I can just move this tray really easily if I want to move the spell, because we will be putting it on the windowsill for a time, but it's easy if it's in a tray to then move it somewhere else, or to just pick it up if you need to open and close the window. So I find it really useful to use a tray, but you can just do this on some paper and put that on your windowsill and then just leave it there. So I particularly like this paper just because it fits perfectly on this tray and it gives me a nice like base. Yeah, but you can use anything really, notebook paper, scrap paper, even like an index card or something like that. So you will need to have some blank paper. This is the paper for my spell, so it already has my things written on it. You will need to have a note somewhere just to hand of the creative questions or problems that you want solutions for. So you will just want a reference somewhere of what it is that you are looking to get answers for in this spell. You will also need an incense cone. This is just a jasmine one. I personally don't actually choose the type of incense for this according to a particular intention, but of course you can if you want to use one that is associated, that has an association of creativity, or it's related somehow to your creative project, then you can. I like to just use whatever I'm feeling like, especially because I will recharge this spell, so I will use different cones kind of to add more energy to the spell. But a cone is really best because it will be less messy and it takes up less space than incense stick, for instance, which I find they just, even with a holder, they tend to just get ash everywhere, and our dish that we put our incense cone on should fit nicely on top of our spell, whether that is on paper or on the tray. So you will need an incense cone, and you will need some kind of small dish for your incense to burn in. This is actually a little cauldron themed candle holder that I got from a supermarket around Halloween. It's plastic coated, unfortunately, so I need to put this little incense tray inside it so that I don't damage it anymore. But yeah, I just like the look of this one, so I like to use that, but it does not need to be fancy. Any kind of small fireproof dish will do, even a saucer in a pinch will do. You will also need a candle, just an ordinary tea light will do. This is actually one of those giant tea lights, so it's bigger than a normal one, but it definitely doesn't have to be. I like it because it's got the gold, and I love gold. So you will need a candle. And you will need a piece of pyrite, also known as fool's gold, one of my favourite rocks ever. I just think they're so beautiful, and they give me this just like fizzy, like productivity, get this shit done kind of energy. So you'll need one piece of that. And that is everything that you need for the basic version of the spell, just your incense, something to burn it in, a candle, pyrite, pen and paper. Candle, pyrite and pen and paper. And like I said, optionally you can use a tray, which is just handy for being able to move your spell if you need to. And I like that it makes it feel kind of contained. So that is useful as well. In terms of things that you can add, part of the original version of the spell, which I said is called Pyrite It Down by Erica Feldman from the book House Magic, is a key. Now I really love using keys in spells because of that book. So this is just actually an uncut key that I got from one of those places that cuts keys. I literally just went in and was like, hi, this is a bit unorthodox, but could I possibly get an uncut key? It's just to be used as a prop for some videos that I'm making. When really I was like, it's for spells. And the guy was kind enough to just give it to me for free because I didn't want it cut. So that's something that you can do if you don't have, if you want like a dedicated key to use for spell work. Obviously you can just use any old key that you might have, any spare keys that you don't use very often and that won't kind of be disruptive to have it used up in the spell for a while. So you can use a key. This is great for the idea of, like, we use this for the correspondence of like unlocking. So whatever, we want to unlock the answers that we're after. So that is like kind of the purpose of this. Another thing that I absolutely love to use for this spell is a light bulb. This is actually the light bulb from my desk, which like is dead now, it doesn't work. And I was like, what better object to symbolize bright ideas and getting answers and epiphanies and things illuminating than a light bulb. So that is a great addition to this spell if you can manage it. It can be, you know, a new light bulb that hasn't been used, because you can obviously use it after you've done this spell, or it can be one that is dead and would be getting thrown out otherwise. It doesn't really matter. The only other thing that you might want to use for this spell is something or a couple of things which specifically symbolize your story or your creative project, whatever it is that you are doing the spell for. So for me, I had two things which represented North of the End, because that is what I was doing the spell for. First of all, I had this, just a little whiskey glass of water. For a couple of reasons. This is a whiskey glass from the Arran distillery. I don't know if you can see that, it says it on it. And one of my characters is actually called Arran, spelled in that way, so it has that connection. I also just wanted some water because water is core to the things that I was trying to figure out when it comes to my story, and water is very important in this story. I have like kind of water magic and water spirits and things, so I wanted to have some kind of representation of water on there. And the last thing that I added is a hagstone. So this is just a stone with a hole in it. They have a bunch of different meanings and purposes if you look into lore and correspondences, but there is actually an important hagstone, kind of magical hagstone in my story. So how do you do this spell? Well, the first step is to identify the creative problem that you want a solution for. Maybe you're not entirely sure what the problem is, but just something about what you're working on feels off in some way, and you kind of want to figure out why that is, and how to get things back on track. So if you have a bunch of different problems, like I did, like a big stack of questions that you would like answers to, then I want you to start by going through and numbering them by priority. So I don't want to share my actual story questions because spoilers, but if you have your note of your questions just on a piece of paper, then go through and number them by like 1 is like the absolute most important one that needs to be answered first, all the way through to the least important one, and that is going to help us in the next step. So the next step is to brainstorm. Actively brainstorming a particular problem is the best way to get that simmering away in that subconscious cauldron where we want it to be. Your brain is constantly processing things in the background. Your subconscious is constantly working on things, simmering them away, and you tend to, whenever you have like an epiphany or like a piece of spontaneous inspiration, it's because it's been simmering away in the background there for a while already, just unbeknownst to you. So the core kind of idea with this spell is that we want to drop these problems that we're after the answers to into that like subconscious cauldron that we already have in our minds, and get them simmering away in there so that we can then have those strokes of inspiration and those ideas and those answers. And I found that one of the best ways to actually lodge those problems in the cauldron, as it were, is to brainstorm it. Now, I have an entire video, or actually I have more than one video on brainstorming, because it's something that I think is, I think it's like the tool to end all tools. It is one of the most important things, or most important skills that you can have as a writer or a creative. I do all the time whenever I come up against things that I need to figure out. So I will link my video on how to brainstorm in the description below. I like to either use a mind map like this, or just like a list method, so using a magic question and then coming up with a bunch of different answers to it. I would recommend brainstorming for between 20 and 40 minutes on this particular creative problem that you are dealing with. If, like me, you have a big list of questions that you want answers to, then I want you to take priority number one, the most important of those questions or problems, and I want you to brainstorm that for 20 to 40 minutes. I wouldn't do any further than that, because you're probably going to burn your brain out a little bit, and it's probably not as productive after that. So that's step number 2. Get some blank paper and brainstorm your most important, your number one priority question or problem for 20 to 40 minutes. Step number 3 is, you may well be very tired after doing that brainstorming, and if you are, I'd like you to take a break before you move on to the next step of the spell. And the next step is to write down the questions that you want answers to. So again, this is kind of like a petition paper, I suppose. And as I said, the rest of the spell will go on top of this paper. So choose a kind of paper that you're happy to work with in that way. So you should have your list of questions to hand. And the next thing that you're going to do is to choose an incantation or some words of power. The one that I used was, "Bring me the answers I seek," but you could use anything which sounds good to you. Something like, "Answers and solutions come to me," or "I call in an answer," or something like that. So the idea is to write down each question that you want an answer to or a solution for, in order of priority, which you've already decided, and you're going to rewrite that incantation or those words of power under each question so that you're repeating it over and over. So let's give an example of what that would look like. So if my question was, so you want your questions to be as specific as possible here, because you're kind of giving your subconscious, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, instructions, and you want to make sure there's no room for error or misinterpretation there. So if you're going to say like, what is the theme of my story, you want to be even more specific than that. So my example is, if I was looking for the theme of the particular project or the story that I was working on called The Summoning. So what is the theme of the summoning, instead of just what is the theme, or what is the theme of my story? You want to be super specific as possible. So this is my first question, this is my number 1, and then I'm going to write my words of power underneath. And I like to just put some stars on either side, just because it just feels magical. I'm just going to write, "Bring me the answers I seek." And then we'll do another star, just to show that that's the magic bit, but you don't have to do anything like that, but you could also do sparkles or whatever just feels fun. And then we're going to write the next question. So let's say it was like, "Who is the main character?" And then we're going to repeat, "Bring me the answers I seek." Now, if you have an entire list of questions that you're looking for answers to, you're going to write out all of them, and you're going to repeat this process. Write the question, and then the words of power, and then the next question, and then the words of power. if you only have like 1 or 2 questions, then I would recommend writing and rewriting them a couple of different times to maybe fill the paper that you're on. Because the more you repeat this, every time you write this, you are lodging it there in your brain. So you cannot skip this part. This is one of the most important parts of the spell. If possible, I would always handwrite it, because that is going to, again, make it that much more likely that that question is going to get dropped into that subconscious cauldron. Because things that we handwrite tend to get lodged in our brains much more deeply than things that we type. So I definitely would not type out your questions and then just print it off and use that. The handwriting this out and the time that that takes and the repetition of it is part of what is going to make the spell work. So if you can physically handwrite, please do for this part. Now, I had enough questions that I ended up using 2 pages. Just use as many as you need. If you work with deities or spirits or guides or anything like that, if you're asking something in particular for these answers, then you can also write a few words at the end, just kind of asking them specifically, like asking them directly, just being like, "Dear universe, please give me this stuff." Or you can address, a particular deity or guide or whatever. And you can also write just "thank you." Thanks for the answers and the breakthroughs that I'm going to be receiving soon. That's real nice. Cheers. Into it. So yeah, so I would repeat this and finish the page. And then I would write, "Big thanks for these answers and breakthroughs," just to finish it off. Cool. And so that is your petition paper done. Or papers. So the next step is to assemble the spell itself. So as I said, if you're using a tray, you're going to get your tray out. If you're just doing this directly onto your windowsill, then you're going to need to go to your windowsill to assemble this. So the first thing you're going to do is just turn your paper face down, and the rest of the spell is going to go on top of this. So the core thing with spells, when you're using different ingredients and stuff, is to have a really clear intention for each ingredient or spell component that you're using. So the way that I like to do this, or the easiest way that I've found, is to tell the item itself what it is going to do in the spell. So I like to start with the words, "I call on you," or "I call on this pyrite," for instance, to, and then tell it what I want it to do. I would say something like, "I call on this pyrite to bring fizzy, productive energy and to help move this spell along," or something to that effect. And I would place it down. And then I'm going to do that for each individual component. "I call on this candle to activate this spell and bring the warmth and energy of fire to the proceedings. "I call on this key to unlock the answers and breakthroughs that I need." I'm going to pop my incense down. We're going to get to that in a sec. "I call on you to bring bright ideas, epiphanies, breakthroughs, and to illuminate what is in shadow." And I think I used the hagstone to prevent it from rolling, actually. See, this is why I should definitely write down each individual purpose that I use these ingredients for while I'm doing it, because I can't remember. "I call on you to protect this spell from negative energy or disruption." And finally, "I call on you to bring Glassday water magic to this spell." So that's definitely not the exact words or intentions that I used for this spell, but I don't remember exactly what I said. So you're going to want to, if this is like me, you've got like maybe a little bit too much for your piece of paper to arrange things easily, then I spent a bit of time kind of shuffling around and figuring out the way that I wanted to arrange them. Which is not mandatory by any means, but I like to, just because I like to enjoy the way the spell looks, as well as, have it, all the right intentions and stuff be there. So let me just fiddle about with it a little bit. What if you were down here? I'm pretty happy with that. I think I did a lot more rearranging the first time I did this. And the final step is to charge the incense cone, because this is kind of what is going to bring all of this together and where this intention is going to be focused and kind of released for this spell. So you're going to hold your incense cone and you're going to close your eyes and imagine or visualize receiving the strokes of inspiration or the breakthroughs and answers that you are after. You're going to imagine what that looks like, what it feels like, how exciting it is to have these epiphanies or to get these answers that you're after. I also like to pick a song that is related to what I'm doing. So I picked a song that I associate with North of the End and that always kind of gets me pumped and raises some energy and stuff for North of the End. And I also played that and listened to it and sang along to it while holding this to kind of like imbue it with that energy and raise that energy and charge it further. And finally, you're going to activate the spell. So this will go on your windowsill and I'll show you how to activate it. So if you are using a tray and it's not already on your windowsill, then pop it on your windowsill and open your window. Now my window opens like sideways like this, which means you need to be very careful not to fall out of it. But it doesn't matter how your window is open, even if it just opens a little bit at the top, that's totally fine as well. You are going to put on some music that is related to your creative project or that you just find inspiring, something that, has like a good energy to it. I actually did this in just my earphones, I just played it through my phone, and you're going to sit with your spell and listen to the music and watch the incense as it burns down. So you're going to visualize your intention, so those questions, that call, as that smoke flowing out of the window, as if it's kind of being accepted by the universe. It's going out there into the world to hopefully come back to you sometime soon. And that's really the core or the key part with activating the spell, is you're going to light your candle showing that the spell is active, and watching that incense smoke and visualizing that as your intention, your questions being transmuted from the form of like, the written questions into this kind of magical form, which can then, flow out into the world for it to then come back to you. So I have two final things to talk about when it comes to this spell. First of all, strengthening and reactivating the spell, and then finally, how do you receive those answers that you're after, that you've called in? So one of the things that I really love about this spell is that it's really clear and visual when the spell is active. The candle kind of shows you when the spell is actively working and calling things in, and the incense kind of helps with that as well. And then you know that when the candle is out and it's kind of dormant or deactive, inactive, and your intention is out there in the world and it's like, it's doing its thing. It's simmering away in there. But the great thing about this spell is that once you've set it up, you can actually continue to recharge and reactivate it for as long as you like until you get the answers that you're after. So the easiest way to do that is to just light the candle again, or replace the candle when it runs out. If it's a tea light, that's very easy to do. You can, of course, burn more incense. You can put another cone down there. You can do them both at the same time. That's what I like to do, is light the candle and do another incense. You don't always have to open the window and let the smoke, flow out the window. I like to just, sometimes whenever I'm burning incense in that room, I'm like two birds, one stone. I'm like recharging this spell and I get some incense, smoke, nice smell stuff. That's a really easy way to add more energy to the spell. But if you want to go even further, you can actually supercharge the spell. And so what I like to do is take another piece of paper, just like the piece of paper that you put on your tray, under your spell components, and just rewrite the questions. Rewrite that petition paper that you already did, just rewrite it again. And then just pop it on top of your first piece of paper, put all your spell components back on top, and now you've reinforced those questions in your mind. You've kind of lodged them back in your subconscious again, more deeply, by kind of repeating the process. And you can do either of those things. So the supercharged, rewrite your petition paper and add that, or just burning the candle and the incense. You can do that like every few days until you get the answers that you're after, until you want to end the spell. You can do it basically indefinitely. Okay, finally, let's talk about receiving those answers that you have ordered. So one thing that I want to encourage you to do with this spell is be open to receiving the answers, your solutions, the solutions to your creative problems from anywhere. No matter how unlikely it may seem as a source for inspiration or answers or solutions. So I think the most common idea, I guess, that we have of doing a spell for inspiration or answers, like what would that look like to get that would be like a spontaneous epiphany. So, you're in the shower or you're driving or you're doing the dishes and just suddenly it comes to you like a bolt of lightning and you know exactly what you need to do. That is fantastic, and I wish for those for all of us, but it's quite rare as well. At least it is for me. That kind of spontaneous epiphany doesn't happen very often. So yeah, be open to your inspiration coming to you in that form where it kind of breaks down your door and slams it in your face, but also be open to it in other forms. So you could be doing some divination or tarot. The answer could come to you there while you're drawing some cards or throwing some runes or doing some scrying, whatever floats your boat. And you may not even be doing divination about your creative project. It might be about something else, but anything which sparks an idea that might help with that, take it wherever you can get it. You might get an idea or a solution just from a conversation with someone, from a friend or family. Maybe you're having coffee with someone. Maybe it's just while you're ordering your coffee from a barista, someone that's serving you at a till or something. The smallest interactions can still give us ideas and give us inspiration. Or it might even come from an email that you get or a social media post that you see in your feed or something like that. And finally, it might actually come in the form of something in your everyday life, which you might consider to be like a sign or a piece of synchronicity or something which just inspires you. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about my thoughts around signs and synchronicity because I have been thinking about it a lot recently and I'm thinking about actually doing a video on it. Maybe not anytime soon. But I, for a long time, did not really hold with the idea of signs or synchronicity, messages just appearing in your daily life that you're meant to take on board and maybe take action on, because I couldn't really see how it could work from a secular kind of standpoint or a psychological kind of standpoint. It seemed very overtly supernatural, something supernatural is sending you this sign. But I've actually started to think about it in a different way, and if you also have that kind of reticence about the idea of getting solutions or answers through a sign or a piece of synchronicity or an omen or augury or whatever you want to call it, then maybe this perspective will help you as well. It all comes back again to the subconscious, that subconscious cauldron that we were talking about. So we have, through this spell, lodged some problems, some questions in there that we would like to simmer away and that we'd like to, produce an answer for. So signs to me are things that your subconscious has identified as important or helpful in some way. So it doesn't need to be the case that there was some actual supernatural shit going on underneath it, that it was actually sent to you. It can just be, just life and random causation and coincidence. But if your subconscious is telling you, this seems important or relevant or synchronous or something, then it probably is to you, because your subconscious knows what is important to you. I don't think I'm explaining this very well. Yeah, I just think that if you allow yourself to think, I wonder if that particular thing is a sign or a piece of synchronicity, or it's a message, or maybe it's part of my answer coming to me, then your subconscious has deemed it important. Your subconscious has said that is useful, and so for me, it's worth it to try and figure out how, and to kind of accept that. There doesn't need to be anything more supernatural than that happening, just that we are faced with tons and tons of information every single day, and we have to filter out a lot of it, and your subconscious, while filtering, like flagged this one up as being particularly relevant or useful, and so it's worth seeing if it is useful. Okay, I'm not gonna just ramble on about that forever. There's obviously this idea of like being open to the answers coming to you, knowing that you've ordered them, they're on their way, and seeing where they might appear, which is kind of fun and exciting, at least for me. But if you are finding that it's been a while and it doesn't feel like anything is arriving, or that maybe you don't feel like you're going to get these answers in a kind of spontaneous way without like returning to your project somehow, or kind of coaxing things along, there are a couple of ways that you can try to like encourage and coax out those answers after the spell has been working for a while. Here are a couple of ways after you've given your spell, a little bit of time to work, and your subconscious to have some time to simmer on it and work on those problems. Here are some things that you can do to try and like coax those out. First of all, you can just brainstorm again. I don't think it will ever hurt to brainstorm. Again, if you've got a bunch of different questions, maybe pick the most important one, or the next most important one if you already brainstormed the previous one, and just do maybe 20 minutes of brainstorming, either a mind map, or I like to use the list method. Again, if you're interested in how I brainstorm and my opinions on how to do it well, because I have a lot of them, then please check out my video on brainstorming. It will be down in the description below. Second way that you can encourage those answers to kind of creep out into the light is to just have a conversation with someone about the creative things that you were struggling with, about the project, and explain the problem that you were having to someone else. And often people will obviously offer some of their ideas, but even just the process of explaining it, even if you're almost like talking to a wall, is still useful and can start to get things moving. So the third way that you can start to encourage those answers to show their faces to you is to listen to some music which is related to that creative project or that creative problem for you, and listen to that either while you're walking or traveling. And the final way that you can encourage those answers to come to you, that you can finally receive them, is to work on a different area of that same project. So if there is a way for you to like sidestep the particular creative block or problem that you're having and work on a different area of that project, just working away on that is still like, reminding your brain that this is what is important, this is what we're working on, this is what we're focusing on, can help things to kind of come loose and come to you as well. Okay, that is it. That is everything for this spell. Even if you don't necessarily feel like you need to use this spell right now, I hope that it kind of inspires you to think about how to use that mind cauldron a bit more. And if you'd like to use this spell at some point, I've actually compiled it into a handy PDF for you with all the steps, so you don't need to necessarily come back and refer to this video or make notes. It's all there for you, so if you head to the description, you can grab that and use it. And if you do use it, please let me know how it goes, because I'm so excited to hear if this works for you guys. Okay, Cinnamon Bun. Happy casting, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.